things that I wanna discuss. And, I spent a lot of time on this, I'm hoping we can just discuss each thing for about maybe 10 minutes. The first one being the budget, and I put some thought into this. There's some documents in here that you all can review later. You got them? You good? Okay. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the budget, and I know we discussed increases in budget, but I had a couple questions about that. I know we were using a fund balance and over, an overage on our fund balance, and we were putting it into 3 areas, but I wanted to ask you, Eric, what would it take to reduce the increase by how much? And could we take some of that money away from the debt service, say $500,000 here or $200,000 there, and what would reduce that to bring it down 1%?
And you're referring to preliminary budget for next year?
I'm referring to the preliminary budget and money that we are putting towards our debt, the extra money. What would the dollar amount be for that if we took a little bit out of each pot, so to speak, and brought it and put it towards the tax increase, is what I'm saying.
It's hard to generally answer your question.
Okay.
I will say, I believe the motion that you're referring to has to do with earmarking fund balance.
Right.
For last year.
It was something we talked about last week, we voted on last week, but my afterthought was, what if we took a little bit of that money and put it towards what, in the percentage that we were increasing, or?
That would be part of the discussion for the development of the budget for next year. So certainly it could be factored in, but
Okay.
at this preliminary stage, it's hard for me to answer your
Okay.
question with exact figures.
So what I was hoping was, at some point, maybe after the new year, we could have a committee of a couple of board members to sit down with you to review the whole budget. Because I don't think we've ever really dove into that like we should. And I think it would be helpful for me and probably other board members to have a, explanation of different things and what we're spending. Maybe, I don't know if there's ways we can reduce, but at least understanding it.
Wait, so you're asking, so, like, and just to simplify, so the Equity Index increase, so 3.6% tax increase based on the Equity Index. Are you saying, like, what if we try to make it 2.6?
Or 3.1, or so.
Is there a way to take fund balance money to reduce that increase? Is it even possible, math-wise? Would it, I mean, obviously it had downstream effects, but I'm not.
Yeah, because we're putting our extra money, because it's above the cap that we're allowed to keep, are we allowed to put that towards our tax money?
Certainly, that
Okay.
is the board's determination,
Okay.
that is the process as we work through and adopt the budget, taking into account what the actual index is and what tax increase, we would set for that recommendation.
And one of the things that we had talked about was when Dr. Steinhoff was showing us the chart and how it had gone up because we had Plan Con money. We're gonna get another one of those bumps from I just was wondering the time frame on that bump.
We don't have confidence that we'll have an increase like that.
Uh-huh.
We did just start having discussions, Mr. Zedley and I, about putting together the budget for next year. And, the administration continues to be concerned about the fact that our budget continues to fall below all of our peer districts. So I would be concerned that we are handicapping future school boards and future budgets by not increasing the tax base by a rate that's indexed to inflation. So Now, I get the question at times, why are our taxes so low? And why does Chichester with less students have a budget in the $80 million and ours is in the 60? And some of that goes back to, previous boards that wanted a 0% tax increase when other school districts were getting 3%, 4%, and 5% increase. So their budget grew. And the residents really, you don't notice too much when it's a 1%, 2%, 3% increase, particularly if it's an estimate. But it's still an increase nonetheless. Those 0% you never get back. You never get back. So, like for instance, if you look at spending per student on all the districts around us, Rose Creek spends $24,000 per student, Garnet 23, Chichester 23, Wallingford Swarthmore 22, Chester Upland 20, and Delta 18. So Rose Tree Media is spending $6,000 more per child than we are. And that impacts our ability to not deliver the things that people want. Why do we have full-day cash? Because our taxes only generate a level of return and revenue that enables us to run a school district on just $65 million. So that would be the concern is, but it is a board prerogative. So I would agree with Mr. Zebley. When we develop the budget, if the board says we don't want to go up to 8% fund balance anymore, we want to lower our fund balance to use that to lower taxes, that is absolutely a board prerogative. It will be our job to say, be careful, because our fund balance right now is what enables Mr. Murray to get us really, really advantageous borrowing rates. And it's one of the reasons why we continue to have exceptional bond ratings. So those things do impact us. Our fund balance enabled us to have very, very low increases in our health insurance premiums next year, because we were able to take some of those funds, put them in our fund balance just for health insurance premiums, and this way that lowered the number. If we didn't have that, it would raise our health insurance premiums higher, which is another cost. So it's always kind of like, which one do you want, right? Do you want the lower taxes, or do you want more programs, or do you want lower investment ratings? That's always the challenge in this. We will continue to do what we need to do, which is present the board with a proposed budget, the implications of changes to that, and then whatever the board decides and approves is the budget that we implement.
Okay, so we could technically take $1 million off of what we're reducing our, debt service that we had the extra in, and we'll put it towards taxes. We could do that. I'm not saying we are,
No, you absolutely.
but there are ways we can move things
You
around. I just
absolutely-
wanna know more about it, that's all.
It would potentially mean though that in
What's
every
that?
successive budget, you're getting less.
Yeah, that's something, yeah, special
It would mean that
meeting.
in every successive budget though, your revenue would be less
Okay.
than otherwise would have been. So, and those are the kind of models that we could put together for you to be able to show you the impact of that. That's on the spending per student. The other one information item that I had put up was with regards to changes in taxes and the amount of taxes collected. And Commonwealth Foundation, which again would use the sources that come directly from PDE, listed the districts in Delaware County. And from 2001 to 2002, from that school year to 2018-2019, of all the districts in this county, there are only 2 other districts that had a lower tax change. So ours was 22.7%, whereas, for instance, Chichester's was 58%, Garnet 55%, Marple 53%, Ridley 47%. So it shows you that impact of those early 2000s when they didn't have tax increases that were in line with the county average, and that's what enabled all the other districts to pull away from us.
Okay. All right, yeah, I just wanna understand it more, so maybe we can meet with you, Eric, and have a meeting after the new year, maybe?
If there's a way to pull money from, you know, places that we're not seeing, or even fund balance and not hurt us in the future.
Or at least
Right, you know,
understand it.
right now, a lot of times we get,
Yeah.
why are we losing teachers? Well, we can't compete salary wise because we got put in a hole. And where does that money come from without, you know, going to our residents and saying we need a 12% tax increase this year?
Yep.
Because we have to get in line to be able to compete with this Unionville Chad.
Gotcha.
We've lost multiple teachers, administrators to Chester County schools because they have the money to have it. And, you know, back before we hired, Rafferty, I think we lost our, we lost Crater, get a $30,000 pay increase to do the same job. Well, a lot of people are gonna leave for $30,000, no matter how much you like your school. There's nothing more than money. I just don't wanna put us in a hole for the future, you know, to try and resolve one year.
So I just wanna understand it, and I
Yeah,
think that meeting
absolutely.
would be important.
What we can do is even too is that, I know we could do with Tracy in the conference room in the admin building, it was me, Doc, and, bring out another name, Tanner. It was us three and Tracy, and we went over, quite frankly, it was every single month. So this is like 2012.
Yeah, it's time for us to do that again.
Well, I mean, I've seen it, once you do it once, you have a better understanding
Yeah.
as far as the light items and so on. I still quiz Eric, but I don't have to do it as much as, or Mr. Zebley, I don't have to do it as much as he can. So yeah, even if it's just that, we can, cause I think we absolutely, I don't wanna wait till May. My opinion is, I don't wanna wait till May for you to vote no.
No, I
As
wanna
a fellow
understand.
board member,
Yeah, I
you
get
know
it.
what I mean? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
where the heck have you been for 9 months?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you didn't say a single word.
That's why I'm asking.
Right, right? Yeah, I mean, same with you, you're doing a lot, you're gonna do a little bit of work before May, June.
Yeah.
Which is that on the budget, you're rather a task and you answer all the board's questions and so on, and to the best of our knowledge.
Mr. Zebley starts on the following year, the day after the current year is approved. That's how much
One
time.
additional thing that I'll add there is that we, for 6 consecutive years, we have approved deficit money. So we have been using, budgeted use of fund balance of over $1 million in each of the last 6 years. We have been doing that. So I answer the question very literally, does the board have the option to do that? And yes, we have.
So the second thing is, I know we talked about the DCIU, so I have some examples here of some of the training, and I just want the board to make a decision of whether we're gonna move forward on the training that's offered by DCIU or any other organization. I'm just gonna read you one particular training, and whether there's a cost or not, and there is a cost to this. When our, you know, whenever we have, some of our, staff go to training. It talks about greater awareness of racial and ethical and sexual orientation, gender and culture diversity of the school and their community and beyond. And in the end, it says, to create effective strategy to our use in curriculum relevant to your position. I wanna have the board decide, we need to have a discussion about this, of whether we are going to approve training with the DCIU on this, or send students to the training on the Equity Professional Training Center.
Lisa, do we send our teachers, is this, I'm looking.
We send our students.
Do they, is this optional, or do they, is this something we require?
I don't know if it's optional or if they sign up, but there's cost, and even if there isn't cost, I'd rather, not have that training approved. Because we're paying for time for people to go. And whether, if they're not being paid, that's up to them. If we're not paying their salary, if it's their own time, that's up to them. But, and you'll see at the last page, some of the things from the Department of Education, and I just highlighted a few of them. So that was my second thing that I wanted to talk about, because I don't want anything like that in the budget for
So,
training.
Lisa, are you saying that we not only do we pay teachers to go to this?
Well, I'm saying that it's offered, and I don't know whether we do or not at this point. I'm not saying we do. But this was discussed, and I wanna make sure that we are not giving diversity training for the teachers, and it's being put in our budget.
Well, one point I have to make with respect to kind of clarifying on funding the DCIU efforts at diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a member district, we are paying to fund the DCIU.
I get it.
So they have created a department that does this work. They've created positions, a coordinator of equity. They hired trainers. In fact, one of our teachers was hired by them to do training on DEI. So their salaries get paid for by school districts in Delaware County. So they provide a lot of training at no cost, meaning no additional. They have been moving gradually towards a greater kind of fee for service to try to reduce overall cost and contribution by districts by charging people who want districts who want to send staff to these kind of workshops. So in some cases, I'm not sure what documents you gave, but you might see $35 or a fee for a book or
$450
or
for
$450. So
one.
typically at that rate, they tend to have college credit attached to them as well. Sometimes they'll run a program and it's run at the DCIU, but you can also get perhaps companion credits from St. Joe's or from Newman, that type of thing. So, that would be where Colleen would have to advocate, I think, in her role as our DCIU rep to say, if this is what Penn Delta wants, would have to say, we don't want to fund these programs, right? But she's still only one of 15 members there, that's the other thing. So her role, her ability to do that is limited. In terms of if we can't send staff to diversity, equity, inclusion, workshops, that will be challenging the police, and I would want some policy or something that will enable us to make sure that we are implementing the will of the board in a way that's objective. Because, for instance, every conference now is attaching the word equity, whether it's the math teachers of America, whether it's the English teachers of America, they'll say equity-focused instruction, equity. So what does that mean? And you could be going to a session that involves just strict pedagogy about instruction, but if the conference title has equity in it, that would be difficult for us to say, well, can we send or can we not? So we would want clarity from the board. If the board says, we are not sending staff to anything that has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, then I would say we would probably want some policy that we would be able to refer to that would enable us to divine whether or not we can send staff to those activities.
Okay, that's what I'm requesting.
So our funding in the DCIU, is that all encompassing under technical high school funding, or is it all, or is it set, or is something like this, if we did send
Yes.
the training, it would just be separate?
Yeah,
Or is it
completely
one?
separate.
Okay.
So the technical schools are funded through our tuition that we pay for every student that goes. Special needs placements are funded by the charges that come back to us. But there's some base costs that all districts pay to support the base cost of running the IU.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand the base cost of that, I'm not disputing that. So I think we should have a discussion on that. Also, as far as professional development and continuing education, one of the things I would like to see for our agenda from now on is what we're paying for, like the title of what we're paying for, the resource, the description, the syllabus on the training, because we approve hours of training or continuing education, but we don't know what it's for. I would like to know, is it for math, is it for science, is it, who is the training at? Would that be a reasonable request?
It's not common. I mean, it would be very atypical what's typical is school districts and school boards approve a budget for professional development, and the administration administers that budget. So in a pure form, theoretically, what would typically happen is the school board approves a budget for professional development. The administration, the principals, the committees, who are closer to the needs of the staff and students, they make determinations as to whether or not they should send people to this math workshop, or should they send the nurses to this workshop for nurses, those that.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, when we have the agenda items and we're approving the payment of the training, like for hours
Yeah.
and things like that, it might say for continuing education, or it may say professional development, which is fine. But I just want to know what the professional development was.
If it's outside of our basic math,
Or even if it's not, it could be a
something like that.
math class, it could be math.
Correct,
and
so
it was
basically,
given by-
I don't wanna approve something that does not show on here that, you know, we sent somebody for extra training in how to segregate these kids even more with this whole equity and all these situations that are not normal, in today's world. Correct, Lisa? We don't wanna be.
Yeah, I just wanna know what it is that I'm approving for, that's all.
Staff
Well-
training, or,
Staff training, yeah.
do we have that in the back?
Like, we have a
in the
list-
backup, is that, I thought some, you know, I read through his documents, sometimes they
No,
read
you-
the details, the real details of the,
Yeah.
of what, no, I looked at what, in service days, what they did, what the title of the courses was there, who taught it, how many people attended, all that, it is in the backup.
Trying to list from, like, number 6 of the agenda,
Oh, sure, sure.
summer CPM training. What does CPM stand
Right.
for? Like, what, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Just to have, like, okay, what is that?
Yeah, it's our math program. It's a basic part of our math series at the high school level. It covers
That's what I'm saying.
algebra,
I think that's what I
geometry.
was just trying to use that as an
Yeah,
example, like,
right.
okay, so we say CPM,
Yeah.
there's a lot of acronyms that could stand for. My healthcare
Well,
would
that's
be
a
something
mystery,
completely
so,
different.
to be honest with you, but we've had that curriculum before me being in this seat. That was just a
No, I'm
I would
not-
say a retraining for staff.
I'm not specifically, I was just using it as an
Just
example
bringing
for
it up.
Lisa to have.
I got you.
You know, when the agenda
Little
comes
bit of
out, is
explanation.
that being like, hey, here's some information on that particular training. I see CPM, I think of external practice management.
Right.
So I think that's just what Lisa's saying, to kind of understand, like,
Right.
hey, what is that? Because I'm not in the education world. I don't know what that necessarily means, just like if I.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm in the dark, like, from the outside looking in, and I wanna be able to understand more of what we're approving, because I think I've been negligent in that, and I wanna understand it. The next thing is the educational curriculum.
Can I get a little clarity on that?
Oh, sure.
So currently, the board, gets the invoice listing, which includes our purchase orders, which would pay for, or at least indicate where we plan to pay or send, teachers to for training. So if we were to send, a administrator to the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development Conference, that conference might have 250, 350 different workshops in it. What the board would see is 400 hours Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. I don't know how we would then get the information for the board to say the person attended and they went to this Thursday afternoon conference at 1:30. when
I
this
didn't
stuff-
know it was that detailed, I didn't realize it was.
And I think that's why so it generally is, you'll set the amount of money that you want to spend on professional development. The comprehensive plan generally will specify, send teachers to areas of this focus. The professional ed committee that Dr. Kaminka runs with the staff says to them, what are your areas of need? What does the data suggest? So speaker who said something like, economically, disadvantaged students are underachieving in math, well, that might be an area that we should provide more training in, right? But it wouldn't ordinarily show up in a clear way for us to be able to say to the board, okay, here you go. So, again, like for instance, if we send somebody to the Keystone State Reading Association, the board would see a cost of sending the people to a workshop run by KSRA. But you might not know if they went to session number 31 out of 120 sessions. I don't know how I would be able to convey that to the board. So I think it would be helpful if we knew what problem we're trying to fix, and then we could try to see if we can generate a solution.
I
So
think-
if there's a problem to be fixed,
I think the problem is that I don't understand sometimes what training is for. And so you just kind of clarified some of the answers, but at the same time, I still have questions about it. So, yeah, I just feel like like I said, I feel like an outsider looking in, and I feel like I wanna know more.
So maybe too, during, you know, we talked about maybe a special session with Mr. Dudley to go through those line items, maybe that would help understand when we go through some of those line items.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be maybe a good start, and then from there, if there's additional things maybe that you're looking for, we can
Exactly.
kind of go.
or maybe participate on the professional ed committee. They meet routinely, throughout the year. And
Okay.
certainly, you know, it's
I
advisory,
didn't know that
so
either.
board
I
members
don't
can
even
be
see
a
every
part of it.
single course, one thing we've done before, no offense, Lisa, but if one teacher takes one class, I don't need to see that, but you did, when we had digging service days here, you did share like the agenda
Mhm.
before and after the fact of what they went through, that might be helpful. I mean, you know,
I get-
we've done that before, and that was always good, just, you know, high level what they're doing, but I don't want the detail of one.
No, but I do understand, that what Lisa's asking for is, we don't want teachers to be signing up or going to educational, trainings that we don't know about, that could be totally against everything that Pendoco's for.
Good point.
And if we're just, you know, allowing them, and I know, we wouldn't schedule them, or we don't know we would, but we shouldn't be scheduling them for that, but if it's a, you know, teacher comes and goes on their own, there could be some differences, I mean.
Obviously, when teachers submit for continuing education, they have to be approved by administration, correct? So we're leaving it in their hands to make sure that they're choosing something that's conducive to the discipline, correct? I mean,
Well,
we're not just blindly approving CE, right?
well, it would be, with respect to the graduate work that we reimburse for with tuition reimbursement, there is a process, they have to get pre-approval. Now, some of them will go ahead and take classes and then just give us the transcript when it's done and say, here's my additional plus credits to move along the salary gap. But generally, if the courses are offered by the universities and colleges that are listed in the teacher's contracts, if they take a graduate level class, is generally approved, assuming it meets certain parameters. And that goes to central office first for pre-approval. I think the challenge would be, you know, knowing what the board doesn't want us to approve. Like, we would need to know, what are we not allowed to approve?
I think a lot of times when we do a study session or, you know, things that we don't actually have specific things, and that's why I'm bringing these things up. Because I think the board doesn't communicate well anymore. And I would like us to start communicating and throwing ideas back and forth, because we all have different opinions, yeah. And so that's why I kind of did this, so that we could, for my own personal, because I have my own opinions, but my opinion isn't the only one that matters here. So I just wanted to make sure that we are more engaged on the processes of everything. And I feel like I said, I don't feel like I know what's going on half the time, and I want to know more. I've been on the board for 10 years now, and I still feel like I'm not in the loop, especially lately, I feel like I'm not in the loop. I know, well, that's what I'm doing. The next thing is the educational curriculum and after-school activities, and you'll see several things in here that I kind of give you examples of, some letters, some things that I think we need to discuss on whether we want to reimagine education 2025 or whether we want to redirect education. And there's been a lot of things going on in the world, and I think our kids are important, and I think their education is important, and I think we need to stick to the curriculum, and not stray away from things that aren't, helping them to learn. I think we're, I'm sorry. Okay. And that has to do with, and I'm gonna say it, signs, flags, anything unrelated to education should not be in the classroom. I have one example here, and I'm just gonna share this with you because the student shared this with me. This picture right here. There's 4 pictures, they're 4 cartoons. This was an exercise done in 10th grade. Last year, at the end of the year, ELA, 2 classes, 2 different, classrooms. This is CRT, and this is something that I don't wanna see anymore. So whether we need to have policies or conversations, and you'll see other things in here, and I don't have time to go through all this, but I think as a board, and this is a sample, I have more, but
Who gave the approval for this 10th grade?
I just wanna, if it was in 2 classes, wasn't part of the curriculum.
Like, I'm
My son had that, and I have that picture on my phone. That's what he brought home to me.
Or what they're hanging up in their classrooms?
A disgrace.
Yeah.
I mean, in 10th grade, my daughter was just asked what she felt about burning the American flag, and I was humiliated.
No, it wasn't just that, the teacher read the answers and the student's name. So we have conversations.
So for public, so this is a political cartoon, which clearly reflects an opinion. I don't.
But why are we giving it to our kids to,
CRT is
persuade them?
period.
Well, no, I think the question, when you say to persuade them, like, I think all of us have had classes where you heard alternative opinions. And if we don't want alternative opinions offered, then that's what we would need, then we need to change our curriculum.
This
So
was,
that the curriculum only offers one
but this
opinion.
was a cartoon that they were to write about. There was nothing
Right.
positive about this cartoon right here.
But
There's-
political cartoons by nature are going to be not objective, right? Like, for instance, so last year, we looked into, a parent concern about something that a teacher had said. And they felt that it was, derogatory to one political party. But then when the principal looked into the entire lesson, people on the other side of the aisle could say that was derogatory to my political party. And in fact, what the teacher was doing was talking about the dangers of third-party influence on campaign finances. So the students saw an ad that didn't reflect well on Republicans, they saw an ad that didn't reflect well on Democrats, but the complaint that I got was that the teacher was indoctrinating kids because they only saw an ad that was anti-Republican. As it turned out, that was factually incorrect. So the challenge that I think we're gonna have with issues such as this is, how do you determine what is appropriate and what is not appropriate? Some people will look at this political cartoon and say, from my perspective, that's a fair assessment of history. Somebody else will look at it and say, I think that's not an appropriate assessment of history. But that's the nature, generally, of political cartoons. They espouse an opinion. So what I think we have to recognize is, I believe personally, there's value in students learning how to consider opinions other than their own. They don't have to agree to it.
When a teacher has children, when they walk into a class about Renaissance, write about burning of the flag, and then reads their answers and their names to the rest of the class, that is inappropriate. That is inappropriate. I think we need audio at the very least in the classrooms. Audio, so that we know if they're doing something or not, because to your point, there was nothing wrong with what that teacher did. But how do we know that? Because the kids are the ones that are telling us this. That they're offended. transgender in 5th grade.
No way.
This is a good example.
No.
So this incident.
No way. This is 5th grade right here, it's inappropriate.
On transgender,
Yeah.
right, so we researched it.
Parents teach it at
It wasn't a
home,
discussion
not
on
in the school.
transgender at all, it's factually incorrect. It's factually incorrect. Now, what is correct is that the facilitator said, what are the ground rules for our discussion? And a 5th grader said, we should respect gender identity and pronouns of others. A 5th grader from the class.
10-year-olds,
Facilitator,
that's,
right?
10-years-olds,
So,
that's
did
10
that-
years old.
So did that, the question is,
It's inappropriate.
what do we do if we're claiming that we are teaching transgender topics to 5th graders when that's false?
Leon, did you receive an email? Yes. Yeah. Okay,
They're only 10.
we
It's
can talk
in-
about this at another time if you'd like.
No, but I think now's the time, the board deserves
They're
answers.
10.
The board deserves answers,
Inappropriate,
all I'm saying
period.
is,
Leon, you wanna say something about that?
if this issue, we looked at last year, we did a complete investigation.
Sure.
Okay? And there was nothing in the lesson that taught kids to be transgender.
Leon?
I don't know what else to do about that.
There was, from my take on it, okay, there
Did you
wasn't.
receive an email, Leon?
We own it. So, the teaching of it is not, we've gotta figure out where so what do you do when the kids bring it up? Do we tell them?
That wasn't the
I'm
problem.
not, so what do you say, and everyone's in, they're 10 years old, what do you say to a kid when they bring up the problem in the classroom, or they bring it up? 5th graders, they know about it, they're,
Send them to a counselor.
That's right.
The teacher
Leon,
doesn't
do
deal
you
with it,
not
you
have
send them
the
to a
email
counselor.
about this poster? I have it, and what did it say?
Right.
I'd have to go back and
I
read it
can
word
read
for
it for
word.
you. You want me to read
Teachers
it?
aren't trained to deal with that, period.
We need to get back to education is the point.
Yes.
We need to
Says
get
the
back to
clinical
education,
social worker.
and this is not education, it's gone on for a year. We want to start with the DVCE, we went to the CARES Committee, and now we're going to the DCIU. None of this belongs in school, none of it. And it's really just, none of it. So if this is what the board wants, that's fine. This is what the board wants. But I think we need to have more conversation about what we're teaching our kids, outside organizations coming in, which is not necessary, which we probably paid with our tax dollars, and I think we need to have a bigger conversation. I'm done with hearing it from parents, and I've talked about it, and it's just all falling on deaf ears. So it's your board, I'm only one person, it's up to you what you decide to do with it, but I think we have to have a serious conversation about it. Along with the posters, along with the signs that are in the classrooms.
I thought we discussed this last year, that there are no more signs in classrooms.
Flags.
They're showing
Yeah,
up.
the only
Flags
flag,
should be the states, the countries, and our school flag. That's it. If you want a club for after school to promote something, whether it be
They're showing up.
LGBTQ, a Republican, a Democrat, a pro-life, a pro-choice, I don't care, but it doesn't belong in the classroom. The last thing I had was, I would like to start a character building committee run by the board. I don't know if, we talked about this a little bit before, but I could see the board approving activities and, maybe projects or whatever with the students. And we can get feedback from teachers and parents and students and taxpayers. Hey, this would be a great idea to do in your school. For example, and I think I brought this to the board's attention, maybe not before. Have a whole week, and I know we do a lot of that kindness stuff, and that's great, and there's a lot of signs around for things like that, but what I would like to see is maybe a whole week of doing something kind for a person every day, writing how it made them feel and how it made you feel. Because you don't realize how much that impacts you when you're doing something good for something else. And maybe have a journal, like this is just one idea of ways that we can build people up and make them more aware of their surroundings, whether it's going to a senior center and this time we can't with COVID, but playing cards with an old gentleman or something. I think these are important things that kids need to learn early, and we could approve or not approve the suggestions, but those suggestions coming to us from our community would be wonderful, and I would like to see something like that.
Are these signs removed, or are they still hanging up?
There's 15 in one room.
So there's a sign that says peace,
There's a sign, there's 15 in one room.
this one here that says peace. Is that, so I guess in general, with regards to signs, if you can't have a sign up that says peace, we need a board policy.
First of all, that's not what that's about. It's not about the peace sign.
Peace signs supposed to be American
It's about the other flags that are up. And there's 15 in
I'm just
one
looking at the one
classroom.
that handed out, that's all.
Okay,
So-
well, I can get you more
so
pictures.
The one that says my classroom is a safe space, Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Why don't-
Shouldn't be there, shouldn't.
So-
Politics do not
So
belong in
So Lisa,
schools.
in answer to your question, Ms. Hussle, what we need to administer the will of the board is a policy from the board that tells us what is allowed to be posted in our
I
in our
agree.
classrooms and not.
I agree.
So, once that board policy says the will of the board is, there are to be no peace signs, where there are to be no, my classroom is a safe space, where there are to be no signs that say, this is a safe and inclusive space
Amen.
for gay, bisexual, transgender students.
Yeah,
If that- and
but it's so everybody should be safe
and
there.
well, I'm just indicating that for us to implement the will of the board, I need a board policy that will then enable us to go down and tear down all the signs.
Don't say tear down all the signs, like that is not.
Or remove, so I take that back, remove.
Okay, so there's one in the elementary school, and this may seem like a little thing, but it says all are welcome here, which is fine. But it has the rainbow hearts across the top and the white to black across the bottom. What happened to the red heart? What happened to that? That we came to a big red heart and all are welcome here. What message are we sending? Everybody should be kind. We have a bullying problem. We have a bullying problem. That's why I want to start a character building, program with the board and have the board in control of that. But just come up with ideas, and it may work, it not work, but it's worth a shot to try to bring some understanding about every walks of life, no matter who it is. You know, and I'm saying you should be kind to all people, no matter their color, no matter their sexual orientation. But we need to find a better way to do it than shoving it down their throats.
I don't know, like. A lot of the students have felt that certain signs, you know, were being shoved down their throat. And I think I brought up later in regards to the Black Lives Matter poster, you know, having the student maybe who walks in the door, and it could be not the intention of the teacher meaning it, that they're trying to be supportive of one group, but I think you incidentally made the student who walks in maybe has a close family member or friend that's a police officer or somebody in that line of work, it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I've heard it from students, you know, and I agree, like, I feel like we're putting a divide, and we should be encouraging those healthy discussions of, hey, you may be this side, I'm this side, but I just recently, someone shared on Facebook an old, I think it was a Heineken, you know, ad where they brought people who, did you see it? From different backgrounds, and they didn't know, right? So they brought them in and they had them do team building things, and at the end, they showed a video of this is, you know, how I feel about this, they give a certain topic. Knowing that they were polar opposites to start, but they had them sit down and they talked and they did some team building, and they got along really well. And then they put up there that, hey, you know, what they said, and they were completely opposite. And you could see the look, and I was like, oh, we're completely opposite, but we didn't know that about each other, but we became friends, and they sat down and they had a Heineken, and they talked, and you know, one, you know, had a comment, it was a transgender, and, you know, he didn't know that, he
I've
thought
seen
that she was
that,
just a female, and they exchanged numbers at the end, so it's, I think, to Lisa's point, is we're we're kind of putting the divide in the school by allowing, and it's not to say that we're not supportive of this group or that group, it's, we gotta bring everybody back together. You know, we gotta be able to
Team
have those
building.
healthy discussions to say, hey, let's agree to disagree.
There's something that I had talked about was, you know how you do dating and the 3-minute dating? Speed dating. Yeah, okay, so if you had kids across from each other, didn't really know each other, and they had 3 minutes to find out as much about that person as they knew, they might not know that person loves art and the other person loves art. So they're walking down, and then they switch, and then they're kind of moving around, same way you do for speed dating.
Speed network.
Yeah, so, and then they walk down the hallway and they're like, you like art, I didn't know you liked art, now I know, and now I know a little more about you as a person. And these are just ideas that I think would be team building, or community building, or character building, to understand each other. That's what I think works, not dividing people.
And I think we have, I will tell you from graduation, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Loving to see that, like, the kids really, they get along with, I mean, you have a couple, but you get that in the
Yeah.
workplace, you know? But I think generally, we have a great community. For everybody, when somebody's in, think of King Cameron, you know, when she got sick, how the community pulled together and supported her. So I don't wanna make the national problem our problem, but that's a great community, and I think we need to just find a way to embrace it and uplift everybody and support each other instead of doing what the rest of the nation is doing and beating each other down.
And if you read the one letter that the student wrote me, and I thought it was awesome. He talks about, you know, kids don't really care about that stuff. They just, you know, unless they're, visibly there's something wrong with them, they don't even care, they just wanna go to school to learn. Now, he's an honor student, maybe he's a little out of the norm of most kids, but, I think if you read that letter, it was sent to me. And I don't even know this kid. So, I just want you guys to all, this is why I'm doing this, because I think we need to have a conversation. And we need to set some guidelines and some policies, or whatever we need to do to create a healthy environment where everybody feels happy and education is our focus. That's it.
Yeah, not to move, character building, I'm very interested in that, Lisa, and we did, should we do something, Dr. Steinoff and Mr. Kaminka, during social emotional learning, I remember we did that in the pandemic during when they were home, and, you know, my guys are in there, and they're like, I'm like, I wanna sit in on it, like, they shut the door and locked me out, but it started off, we're like, this is kinda corny, you know, but then they started, regurgitating it, like, this is part of social emotional learning today, and did you know? And so they were going around, you know, it was, and they got something out of it, basically. I know we have the Be Kind initiative, and, you know, we do a lot of that, but just, without dragging it on, real quick, what we do today, around that kind of character and recognizing, because I know we do a lot.
We do a lot. I would say, you know, going back to 2015-16, if you remember, we had all 4 elementary schools were recognized by National School of Character. 3 one year and 1 another year, something like that, or 2 and 2, I forget the actual order of that. And that's based on certain level principles. It's not necessarily we're following a program, it's things that you put in place to ensure that you're building rapport. So we talk about the social emotional learning. The big launch of that was connection between peer-to-peer, teacher-to-peer. A lot of that building, open up that I would say that line of communication, getting to know each other, your classmates. Around the character ed, we do core essentials. It's one of the programs that's been in place before I even got to Pendoco School District. It's a supplemental resource around character traits. So, and we get some resources around that. So a lot of elementary, they'll do a morning meeting session or a classroom meeting, and they're able to talk to students about different things, different character traits. You know, it could be honesty, it could be the word of the month. You'll see that if you go to elementary schools, each month they just build on the character words, and then the teachers have some lessons that they are provided through our core essentials, and our counselors really facilitate that work. We're all K-12 with positive behavior intervention support schools, so that's a program with national recognition. It's a lot about safe and healthy schools when it comes to the whole child, right? It really addresses the social emotional aspect and behavior of students. So any school program, you have to have the whole child in mind, right? And I think we're having, hearing some conversation around that. I'm sure it's the academic, it's the behavior, it's the social, emotional. So we definitely value a lot of that work. So, yeah, of course, middle school, we had Choose to Be Nice. Maybe that's what you're referencing as well. So that was something was approved a couple, I would say, 3 years ago. I know Mr. Lucius really looked into that and wanted to have that in school. Again, about, being kind and respecting peers and that connection. It's a lot about behavior, social, emotional work. So, and high school is very much in the positive behavior intervention support. And I'll say this, it starts school-wide initiative. Like, this is how, these are expectations in the schools. This is how we want everybody to walk down the hallway. We're gonna recognize that. We're gonna celebrate accomplishments academically, socially, and emotionally. But, the biggest thing is that we have like a tiered system. So that's all the stuff that we do. And I would say 80% of the kids are really good about that, right? You do all that work, there's always some kids that need some intervention and support, right? So that's that, when I say PBI, positive behavior intervention support, the systematic approach to make sure that you see the kids are doing really well, but when you see the kids who are struggling with interventions, you have supplemental resources to help those students. So it goes beyond just that conversation around honesty for the month, or that, I would say, an ELA teacher can take that word honesty the month, know that's happening in the school, and infuse that in in their lesson for the day, right? ELA, the novel they may be reading. So it goes beyond. So we make sure that we have supports for kids who need that extra support, right? And you go across, the nation, you will have 80%, 85% of your kids respond to all of it. And you always have some students who need extra support. And literally, there's research to say 5% need more individual support, 15 need more like group support, group counselor, so on. 85% classroom, school-wide stuff takes care of that. So we do a lot. I mean, it would be interesting to hear from the different schools. I know I presented back in, I think, 2014 or 15 around the character education program when I was a principal at school. But they are doing a lot in their individual schools.
Eric, I have a question for you, because Sue had brought up like that the lower income students don't do as well. Is there a way we could match some of our honor students with those children, like after school, or, like sometimes, and that would give them, some of our students.
High school has something similar to that. They definitely have, it's not necessarily, it's for those who need it, support. It's a tutoring program where it's peer-to-peer tutoring. We don't tend to do that in middle school, high school, and middle school and elementary. We have like a peer buddy kind of connection where you make that connection. 5th graders and 1st grader have peer buddies, and that's more like they'll come in, they'll do some activities, not necessarily academic, more that social emotional aspect.
But if we're trying to increase, the children's ability or whatever, and they need some extra help, would it be possible for us to take some of our students in high school that are performing well, if they're willing to tutor these younger kids, maybe have some kind of, I don't know.
Well, that would require us to label students by their economic status, which we couldn't do. You could have students who are economically disadvantaged, who are high achieving, and so would they be the tutors?
I'm not saying by economics, I'm saying the kids that aren't doing well, like, if there's 3 3rd graders that just, I don't care what kind of economic background they come from, but if they're not doing well and they need extra help, would we be able to put a one-on-one with that child for an hour after school to help them to improve and grow? And I'm not talking I'm talking, I don't care if your kids, what color they are, what, anything, I just want those kids to do better.
The peer buddy tutoring tends not to be effective at creating the kind of change that you would want to see with that kind of a difference in achievement between entire classes of students. Do they do some tutoring? Yes, they do. Can it hurt? No, it can't hurt. I think what would be more effective would be to have people who are certified in mathematics providing extra support for people who need support. Challenge is it's not going to, it helps students in the moment, not going to change that kind of difference that you see in performance to the level that you would want to address, the kind of things you want to have.
The reason I'm saying that is because I know with my granddaughter and grammar, I have to sit down with her and explain, and when I explain it differently than a classroom discussion, she gets it. So that, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
I was just gonna say, sometimes it's, a kid may, so if you think maybe some, as you pointed out, it's economically, challenged, maybe it's not something that, at home, if they don't have that support at home, we can do whatever we do in the school to provide that to them. I don't know how successful we're gonna be because they don't have the support, so maybe to kind of expand on that a bit, like, how they have the big brothers, big sisters type of program, like maybe, then they get attached. I mean, I've seen it in some of the sports programs where it's, they're connected to the youth all the way through, and you see those little kids look up to the big kids when they come in, and kind of like the same thing, so they have someone that they can feel comfortable with, because maybe they're not comfortable because of an at-home situation with a male, and that's just happens to be the support person that we're able to bring in to help that, you know what I mean, like, so just trying to think of ways out of the box that maybe is also less expensive on the district, because we have the budget constrictions, but so also, I think it also helps build up the confidence of some of our high schoolers, it gives them something to do, hey, I'm in honors because this is keeping me out of trouble, and I'm not, maybe not a sports person, or, and then maybe, I don't know, I just see like a way that, again, our community is great.
It's rewarding to the honor student. I feel that way when I accomplish something with my granddaughter. I just think it's something
Just
to
trying to
talk
think about
about.
the ways that maybe we can help, help each other, on that, like, because I think that we have a lot of opportunity, an amazing community with a lot of great people with a lot of different backgrounds and experiences that, we could probably really create something dynamic that we can have in this year and go through that, gets, and poll the teachers, hey, what are you guys seeing, like, what are your ideas, because they're with the kids every day, and maybe they have some really great ideas, get the creative juices running in them and get them excited and get them invested and,
I would
excited
like-
about education again.
Just like the character building thing, I would like to see things like that brought, like suggestions from the teachers that we might not be thinking of, that would help these students. There's a lot of ideas out there, and we're only 9 people on the board, but there's a whole community, and sometimes just sharing one idea can grow into something really big. Something to talk about.
It's definitely would be beneficial to the kids. I would like to see it, look forward to it, see if it's doable. We have to get kids to want it. Sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle, not necessarily to get the honor student to volunteer their time, but to get the other kids.
You might get some.
I don't want my kid.
More high school students are looking to get.
My kid ain't gonna do it, can't pass his own class. So, he's sitting home trying to pass his own classes, but you understand, like, I think we'll get a lot of volunteers, we'll get kids that are doing well. The concern is getting the kids who are struggling, sometimes struggle at home as well, so they don't have ways to get, oh, well, if I stay after class, I can't get home, my mom can't come get me.
So then I think, to try to get this group up, the group that, Sue has pointed out to us, so how do we change that? And I think that's a bigger discussion, it's a longer discussion, but I think it should be a collaboration between us to say, because there are a lot of challenges that are out of our control. And how do we push a kid who maybe has, pardon me, but a shitty home life and really doesn't give a crap because they are not given a crap about at home? How do we change that? How do we give them those tools to believe in yourself? And I've seen it happen. I'm gonna give my husband a pat on the back right now because I've seen him do it, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. And everybody's busy, we have our own struggles who have the time and energy to do it. It's not easy, and it's sad sometimes to watch. It's heartbreaking. We've had kids, I mean, out of college, out of school come to us because they've had this, that, and the other thing, and it's heartbreaking, but how do you change that?
But when you see a child that gets something that they didn't get because of another way of explaining it or having that extra help, and when the light bulb goes off and their self-esteem just, you see it, that they feel so much more confident, it just changes their whole attitude about things, so,
Happened to my nephew.
yeah.
I just wanna jump in there, so as you're describing some of these students, there's a lot of interventions happening. I mean, we'll be, happy to share a lot of that happens at that high level. Counselors work really hard, and teachers are working really hard, reading specialists work super hard, like, key folks, do a lot of work. Continuous improvement, I definitely agree, I think that's education. I think you're always continuing to improve, in education, so I think that's a great thing. But we are doing a lot, so I do wanna recognize the staff that are doing that and always come up with different ideas. We do, I sit with, I think Dr. Simon mentioned it, professional ed council. They work on, we talk about what are academic supports that we can benefit from, what are needs, but a lot of the work we do is all around, like, how do we support kids, the whole child academically, and we actually use data to pay attention to students who are not meeting expectation loads in the classroom, state testing, our own universal screening assessments that we implement throughout the year. We really try to close those gaps all year. So I mean, that's something that, we can have more discussions, so you hear the ideas of what we're doing, specifically at the different tiers, and I'll call them tiers, so I mentioned 80, 50, and 5%. Like, you can look at different tier level interventions. We have interventions that we're putting in place around that, so.
Miss
So it-
Crash, right, is when I say, I know I keep saying her
Yeah.
name wrong. She's amazing. I'll use
Yeah.
my nephew as an example. He started, there was a huge gap in his reading,
Reading.
and they worked, and this year he is finally
Yep.
at where he should be. And it was amazing because, and I'm not putting down it, like, I know we have a great system, but, it keeps getting pointed out to us, this is under discussion, right, this particular group, how do we fix it? When there are challenges, like I was saying, that are kind of out of our control, we can put all of our investment and time into it, so we have to start thinking outside of the box to give them. So, I mean, that's a big focus, and not just in Pensacola, it's a focus across the nation, and maybe, I don't know, like, it's being brought up, so that's why, we have to discuss it.
And it's not it wouldn't cost us anything to do this either, if we put something in place for the students. Maybe a few Pendelco dollars, you know what I mean? Whatever they're, some dollars. But it wouldn't even cost us anything, and it would be a trial, maybe with 2 or 3 students to see how it
If we
went.
try it, it
Not a
doesn't
big
work,
deal.
but we can say, hey, we're trying. Yep. Or maybe we're just not aware of every great thing that, is happening in downtown County, and you can say, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Here's been our success rate, maybe it's just.
And I never wanna base anything on anything except the kid's ability, not their income, not their parents, nothing, just what they're capable of doing.
Lisa, you were kind enough to put together, a list of items. Can you just kind of summarize, for myself and cabinet, what maybe some of your asks are? I mean, I know the one, with regards to the budget, we will, do a more extended budget preparation session in January, at the study session that evening. So I think we could certainly make sure that we walk through the components of the budget and the implication of marking certain funds towards certain expenses. We'll make sure that we build that, kind of walk through the entire process with the board to answer your questions on the budget. We'd like some more additional information about approvals for workshops. We'll have to talk that through a little bit, share with you some of the challenges we'll have in getting that information, but my team will talk about that to make sure that the board gets what they need.
I didn't think it would be a big deal, that's why I think.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it and see if there's ways, some, for instance, some school boards will approve on the agenda, conference trips, overnight conference trips. You know, I don't know, I'm not recommending that you do it, I'm not saying yes or no, that's just an example of the kind of things that we have to think through. Maybe that would help give the board, some more input, you know, on where professional development dollars go. So we'll talk through that. With regard to the DCIU, was that primarily feedback for, Ms. Powell?
That was for policies on what we're gonna pay for training on diversity, equity, inclusion. I want the board to have a policy or something in place where we're not going to be involved in it.
Okay. The other items, I indicated on the concerns over signage, that's just something, you know, the board can come back with some proposals for policies. on
Policies
What's
for-
permitted and what's not permitted, we would need that.
And what's permitted and not permitted as far as, and I'm gonna say discussions, and I know that's a broad thing, but I think that my philosophy is if a child knows a teacher's political views, they failed as a teacher. It's up to the parents to raise them, it's up to the teacher to teach them how to think, not what to think. And I think that should be something that we talk to, just make sure that they're all on the same page with that, because I hear a lot of things, and I just think that sometimes they're implementing stuff not in the curriculum and their own opinions, and they don't need to. So I don't know how we have that conversation, but I will continue to bring you these things as they come up, and I do have other things, but, you know, I'm just trying to more or less generalize for tonight, so we're not here all night. But, I know it's in our head.
Alright.
Yeah, Brian.
It's
What you
actually
doing,
9:15.
Brian?
I did look up, I was like, oh.
I'm very happy to know that that's only
We
nine.
do need to
We
meet,
do.
we need to meet and discuss,
A
you
lot.
know, signage, what's acceptable and what's not. No matter what we do, there's gonna be those that try and push the limits.
But you know what, if you just stick with education, like I said, 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, I just think we got away from what we're supposed to be doing. In my opinion, but we'll talk about it. I don't wanna be here all night talking about it, cause it's gonna be, you know, yeah, I'll just bring it to the board.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the hard work you did for that.
I have one personnel item